What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today we are having a look at my top 5 players to buy in FPL ahead of double game week 29. Welcome back, everyone. FPL Harry here. Game week 29 is fast approaching. International break drawing to a close. All of those teams who've been keeping an eye on all over the world have played their matches. The likes of Caicedo, the likes of Estupinan are on their way back from Australia as we speak to try and get themselves ready and available for that Brighton match on Saturday with that quick turnaround. But today we're having a look at game week 29, my top 5 players to buy. A few potential differentials in here, a few potential more obvious picks as well. So before we dive into the video, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We are so close now to 50,000 subscribers. I'm going to try and hit 1,000 likes on this video. Diving in, it's a player who's very talked about, and it is Bruno Fernandes, one of the most highly transferred in players going into this week, and I think there is a lot of good reason for it. If you are considering whether you should go with him, here I'm going to put forward a case for you and why I think you should be going and bringing in Bruno Fernandes. He is 9.6 million, 7.4% selected and predicted to score a massive 34 points over the next 6 game weeks. That does include, of course, the double in game week 34 they have, but it also includes a blank in game week 32. Now, whether you go and buy Bruno Fernandes and whether you buy a few players in this list might depend on whether you have your free hit left. A lot of us do still have our free hit left, and you will be targeting a free hit in game week 32. If you don't have your free hit left, it might mean that Bruno Fernandes is not quite such top priority of buying in this week. You may alter and go for someone like James Maddison, for example, because he does play in game week 32, although doesn't double in game week 34 later. So far this season, Bruno Fernandes is one of those players who plays every single game, plays almost every single minute. So even with the fixture congestion that Manchester United do have coming up, with the likes of their European commitments plus the Premier League, you can be pretty sure that Bruno Fernandes is going to start. 5 goals, 7 assists, averaging almost 5 points per start, and we've seen it so many times before that Bruno Fernandes loves a double game week. He's also potentially on penalties. Him and Marcus Rashford seem to change every single penalty there is, depending on who wants to take it, depending on who's on the pitch, and depending who's on form during that game as well. So you do have that little bit of a lure, but it's not necessarily nailed on that he's going to be on penalties. Also likely to be on a lot of set pieces as well, combining with Luke Shaw, who we might get on later on in this video. So the double they have, Newcastle and Brentford, then Everton at home and Nottingham Forest away. I think over the next 3 game weeks, Bruno Fernandes could be up there with one of the highest scoring players in FPL. And then, of course, they double again in game week 34, plus predicted to double again in game week 37. I think Bruno Fernandes, buying him this week, although you might look at the double and think it's difficult, I think buying him now and holding him for pretty much the remainder of the season is a great idea. Next up is a big differential, and that is Jarrod Bowen. And this might be a player that is a good pick for those of you who don't have your free hit left. Now, you're probably thinking Harry Bowen's 8 million. He plays for West Ham. West Ham are struggling. But generally, to talk about, if you are chasing in your mini leagues, if you are chasing in overall rank, I think there is a bit of a play here to go and potentially punt on a West Ham asset, particularly if you don't have your free hit available. They have a double in game week 29, both at home, of Southampton and Newcastle. Now, Newcastle have been good, but they have been leaking goals, and we know Southampton is definitely a team they can get after. They play Fulham away in game week 30, then they play Arsenal at home in game week 31, a difficult fixture. But in game week 32, they have Bournemouth away. Now, if you don't have a free hit, then targeting that game looks really nice. Now, if you have your free hit, it does diminish the appeal a little bit, but they also do double in game week 34. They are one of just 3 teams, along with Manchester United and along with Brighton, that double in both game weeks 29 and double in game week 34 as well. Jarrod Bowen has 4 goals, 5 assists, predicted to score over 30 points over the next 6 games. And unlike, of course, Manchester United and Brighton, they have a fixture in game week 32, which of course is that Bournemouth fixture. Now, you could look at the likes of Jarrod Bowen. People will be looking at Danny Ings as well up front as a potential differential. There is Ben Rama in midfield. There is also Kurt Zouma in defence. As I say, it's probably not one if you are just trying to hold your ground, you're happy with your rank, you're happy with your mini league. But if you are chasing, I really think there is a differential in West Ham that could do well over the next 6 or so game weeks. Next up is the striker that we've gone on here, and that is Alexander Isak of Newcastle. Probably the number one forward I'd be looking to buy in FPL at the moment, and I do think he is a season-long hold if you are looking to buy him now. Of course, they have a double in Game Week 29, which is mixed Manchester United and then, of course, West Ham, Brentford and Aston Villa in the two fixtures. Following that, they do play in Game Week 32. Now, they don't have a double in Game Week 34, but they do have a Southampton at home fixture. If you had to field Alexander Isak in that, or he's part of your bench boost as well, I think that's absolutely fine for a single game week fixture. Plus, they do have that double to be rescheduled against Brighton, which is predicted to go into game week 36. We don't have that confirmed, but that is where we feel it is most likely to go. It looks like he's come in and being the number one choice in that Newcastle attack. Seems to have overtaken Callum Wilson. Of course, he scored 3 goals in his past 2 appearances, 6 goals for him in total so far this season, having started just 7 games. So when he's on the pitch, when he's given starts, he is that goal scoring threat. Hopefully he can stay fit, and I do think he's that number one choice going into this run of games, into the final leg of the season, as Newcastle try and close out that top 4 over the likes of Callum Wilson. And that's really important. We think he's nailed, but also Newcastle have something to play for, and it's likely to go right down to the wire. Liverpool, Spurs, Newcastle, Manchester United all fighting for 2 places in the top 4, and I think it will probably go down to the last day of the season, particularly for Liverpool, Spurs and Newcastle. Manchester United might secure 3rd slightly earlier on, but it does mean that there won't be that much rotation. There's also no Europe for Newcastle, unlike the Manchester City assets, the Manchester United assets and the Chelsea assets, of course, that people might be looking to buy. 6.7 million, a big differential at the moment, still at 3.4% owned. Predict to score almost 30 points over the next 6 game weeks as well. And if you are free hitting in game week 32, even better, because you don't have to play him against Spurs, although Spurs are not actually defending that well at the moment, so it wouldn't be such a problem if you had to. Next up, we have Mitoma, who is one of those potentially coming late back from the international duty, but I do think he'll be absolutely fine to start in game week 29. It is probably one of the best double game weeks in game week 29 for Brighton, of Brentford at home and Bournemouth away. Definitely think that Mitoma and Brighton can go and get something in this one. Now, after that, the fixtures do get a little bit more difficult. Tottenham and Chelsea in those 2, then they blank in game week 32. So, probably only buy extra into Brighton if you have the free hit available, but then they double in game week 34. They're then predicted to double in game week 36, and they're predicted to double in game week 37. They have more fixtures left this season than any other team. So having the right triple up on Brighton is going to be very important between now and the end of the season. 6 goals and 6 assists for him. He's only started 13 games. It's really been since the restart that Mitoma has started to look the player that we know he can be. Predicted to score almost 30 points and at just 5.5 million still. His ownership is starting to creep up to 23%. Now, this sort of opens up a general discussion about what I think about the Brighton assets. I still think Mitoma for me is the number 1 midfielder I would be buying over McAllister and over Solly March. If I had the money to go and buy a second, I think McAllister comes second, followed by Solly March coming in 3rd. But Solly March is a bit cheaper, and if you can't afford McAllister, you need the money elsewhere, then I have absolutely no problem with that. Then we look at Evan Ferguson, the other attacker. I think Evan Ferguson is going to be the number 1 forward for Brighton as we look towards the latter parts of the season. I do think he'll be starting the majority of games. My only concern is when they play maybe 2 games a week, 2-3 games as they've got between game week 29 and game week 30. There is a potential chance that he might not start all of those games. So that's a bit of a worry for me. I don't think personally I'd be going and buying Evan Ferguson. And then looking in defence, I still think the best triple up on Brighton is 2 midfielders and 1 defender. I do think Estupiñán is probably going to be fine to play the first game in game week 29 and be fine from then on out. There are a bit of fixture congestion later on when we might see a little bit of rotation for him, so you could go for Lewis Dunk. But for me, the ideal triple up on Brighton looks like this. We have number 1, it would be Mitoma. 2nd, it would be McAllister. And 3rd, it would be Estupiñán in defence. And the final pick on the list, number 5, we've got Luke Shaw. We go back to Manchester United. So we've already discussed with Bruno Fernandes the fixtures that they've got. Newcastle and Brentford, Everton at home, Nottingham Forest away, then a blank in game week 32. So again, if you're not playing your free hit, you might not want to necessarily invest heavily in Manchester United, or you might want to look elsewhere potentially. But I think Luke Shaw at 5.2 is warranting the amount of attention and the amount of transfers in he's likely to get this week. Bruno Fernandes and Luke Shaw likely to be my transfers in. If you haven't seen my transfer plans video or my team selection video. Go and check those out depending on when you are watching it. But I don't necessarily think there's going to be loads of points, maybe one clean sheet max in game week 29, but game week 30 is great. Game week 31 is also great. Then game week 34, a double, and then a nice run of fixtures between now and the end of the season, plus potentially doubling in game week 37 as well. So like Fernandes, like Rashford, like Luke Shaw added into this as well. That for me is the ideal Manchester United triple up, and I do think it's worth doing it because of the amount of double game weeks they do have on the horizon, plus the nice run of fixtures they do have. Now, we might get to game week 36, get at 37 as well. They might be secure in their top 4 finish. They might still be in Europe and the rotation might start to kick in, but that is a problem for later down the line, and I do think investing in Luke Shaw now is still a really good idea and something I am planning on doing with my team going into game week 29. So we've had 5 potential transfers. We've had cheap defenders, we've had more premium defenders, we've had midfielders, we've had forwards. Let me know what you think. Are you bringing any of these into your team? Are there any big differentials you're going with, like the likes of Jared Bowen, like the likes of those other West Ham assets who could be great punts going into game week 29? Thank you so much for watching. As I said at the beginning, so close to 50,000 subscribers. Any help you could do to get me there would be fantastic. If you are new around here, subscribe. If you are not, or you're enjoying these videos, do not forget to hit that like button as well. Thank you all so much for watching. There'll be a team selection video. There will be a deadline stream before the game week 29 deadline, so I'll be back again very soon.